From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView podcast.
All right, and welcome to your July episode of the DuView podcast. I am as always, your host, Du, aka Ryan Dumont, and joining me to my right is good college buddy and just all-around awesome guy, originally hailing from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Sean Cameron.
Hey.
Sean, thanks for coming up, and more importantly, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to be up here, live from the Pine Tree State.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And so, as many of my friends that I have from Massachusetts, I met, in college at St. Anselm College specifically, as we've talked about a time or two, and that's no secret to the story of how Sean and I met. But we've had a lot of misadventures, adventures, and other various events of the like, as we've set out here on our friendship. So we'll break into that in just a couple of minutes, Sean, obviously, and get going. But first and foremost, we were both involved in the political science program at St. A's just to have common interest and all that type of stuff.
Origin story.
Yeah, oddly enough, Matt taking classical political philosophy. Did you just take that class because it fit your schedule, or because they had classical and modern, or like the old stuff? You know what I'm saying? Like they had the old stuff and the new stuff, and we both just happened to take the class with the old stuff.
I know that was at this point kind of many moons ago.
Yeah.
But I don't remember my exact reasoning for it. I would say probably you'd take the classical first and then move on to the modern.
Yeah. Yep.
But I love ancient history. I love ancient Greece, ancient Rome, all that stuff, Persia.
Yep.
I was trying to learn as much as I can about it. So I was in politics as a major. That was my specialty. But
Yep.
really how I kind of came to politics was through loving history, and learning about history is a lot of learning about politics through the years.
That's very true. And I mean, it was kind of weird, I guess, for me. We were taking that class in the midst of the 2016 election, which little did we know, I guess, how much that was going to affect the changing of this country.
That made the environment really great and loving and welcoming at the time too. Yeah, everybody was.
But it was just interesting as we're sitting here reading about these philosopher kings and Aristotle and stuff. How one of the most, I guess you could call it, dynamic or polarizing elections of American history is going outside out the window at the same time. We're reading about these guys who are long dead. You know what I mean? And they were democracy's, basically a lot of them were saying democracy doesn't work. It's shit. You need to have a couple people rule everybody. And it was just kind of huh.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. In case anyone's wondering, the specific text that was one of the core pieces of this class was Plato's Republic.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff that he's talking about now comes out of that. And yeah, that was essentially the end of the book. It's where the allegory of the cave comes from. It's a very famous ancient text, but yeah, it kind of gets to the point where democracy essentially devolves into a popularity contest
And oligarchy.
Yeah, there's I can't remember the exact sequence, but it goes democracy devolves into oligarchy, which devolves into some other form of government, which evolves into tyranny
And autocracy, basically,
yeah,
at the end of the day.
eventually a strong man just rises up.
Yep. And I mean, that you see that happen in a lot of countries throughout history. Whether it happened at various times or have various strongmen or whatever, whether that's influenced by foreign actors or internal actors. But I mean, it is there. I guess there is a tale to be told there.
Yeah, for sure, and it shows. Everybody thinks we're so much smarter now and we're so much better than people in the past.
Those that came before, and it's not always true in all facets either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the reality is we're mostly the same as we were. Thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
One of the big, things that I see a lot on the internet lately is one of the most ancient texts, 3,000, 4,000 years old, I believe, from Sumeria, is a guy sending a complaint about getting bad copper from a copper merchant. It's one of how many surviving pieces of text are there from 3,700 years ago? And
not too many.
Yeah.
And on top of that being almost like an email complaint to your compliance department.
Yeah,
That's wild.
literally.
Yeah,
you know,
like things have not really changed. Like I hope this script finds you well, or this scroll finds you well. I don't actually hope it finds you well at all. But like it's like I don't know, just because we have like modern solutions to quote unquote modern problems, but like you're saying, Sean, like a lot of those modern problems aren't that different from the ancient problems or the historical problems that the
it
same
is.
people were facing, just on different scales.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. It's like everything repeats
Been there,
itself.
done that,
And
seen
that's
that.
that's a quote from the Old Testament from 1500 BC, something like that. So,
Yeah.
you
No, I
know,
mean, and without even getting into like the real, I mean, we're not even really getting into the weeds on any of this stuff either. I mean, but we read stuff about Xenophon, the philosopher king, which was Persian. He was a Persian guy.
he was Greek.
Greek. Excuse
He
me.
was
Excuse
Greek,
me.
but
Greek.
he traveled through Persia.
Persia. Oh, that's right.
And
That's
he
right.
was in the service of this. I just learned all about the Persian Empire, my
Yep.
ancient history thing. But
Okay.
he was in the service of Cyrus the Younger, who was
Right. Who was the Persian?
he was a
emperor.
prince, and he tried to overthrow his brother, who was the king, and so he hired all these mercenaries, and one of them was Xenophon. And,
Yep.
yeah, the Anabasis is a great story if you ever
Yeah, I
can
mean,
dive
just
into that.
kind of read it. I mean, there's obviously some mythos with some of these people. Like, I mean, like anytime you get like a Hercules type, you know what I mean? Like, he's smart, he's strong. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he does it all type of thing. You know,
Well,
it's like
Back to what the point we just made. It's like ancient historians and ancient, a lot of people who were now ancient historians at the time were basically news reporters, and they were
that's
just
true, yeah.
they were just as full of shit then as people are now.
You mean the oldest profession isn't actually prostitution? It's being a bullshit
It's
artist.
lying.
Yeah.
So like,
That's the quote. Might be the quote from the episode right there.
like if there's fake news now, imagine history.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always been fake news, and whether it be via propaganda, whether it be via misreporting and misinformation,
Yeah.
whatever. But you're right. I mean, that's true. I mean, and I'm sure you can, I mean, find numerous examples throughout
Oh, of
history.
course. I mean,
like,
This is a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah,
but
please.
the way I got into the kind of Persian Empire as a thing of study is you always hear about them through the lens of like the 300 Spartans fighting them
Yeah.
at the pass.
Yep.
And I just, I kind of wanted to see what other people kind of had to say about it, because they get painted as the villain in history.
Every time.
And
You can thank Zack Snyder for part of that, though.
yeah,
I do
they
feel.
influence it in the modern culture for
Yeah.
sure. But even going back decades and centuries, because what they wrote down was pretty much lost, most of it, to history.
Yep.
But what the Greeks wrote down was much more preserved, and so we get this historical record of a people, and it comes from their arch enemy. It's like,
So they're gonna paint them in a great light.
yeah,
obviously,
exactly.
Right?
It's like, what if the only, if hundreds of years from now the only sources about the Soviet Union or Russia come from American historians, people are going to read it and say, this evil, horrible country. And the Soviet Union did a lot of bad stuff, but when you look at history, it's really not black and white.
It's more of a kettle and a pot problem too with that too. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, of course.
You know, like, I mean, and I'm just getting this out of the way in terms of for the scope of history. I mean, any person who has ever attempted empire has had to do terrible things to maintain said empire.
Oh yeah,
You know,
naturally.
that's all. Yeah.
Well, let's go to use the Greeks as another example. It's like when they invaded us, it was the tyrannical king, and he's evil, and he's out to destroy the world, and he's power hungry, and we hate him. But then when Alexander went and invaded,
It was cool.
Invaded there, let's get him. We're the best. We're gonna.
Well, it's funny when you're on the winning side of things, you do have a different view of things. You know what I mean? Like in terms
Yeah.
of how you write the story.
Yeah, we got those sons of bitches out of there.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Now our people are in charge, and everything's great. No more problems
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, right? I mean that's anything. You could say, "Oh, it was great," until it wasn't.
Mm.
I mean that's anything though. But no, you're right. I think you're right, buddy. And I mean that's kind of, why it was unique in that we met in that class and then eventually had a complete separate class still in the world of history, not specifically a political class, but had a lot of major political ramifications via the class. We both took a class on the Cold War, which eventually allowed us both to go to Cuba, which we'll unpack our Cuban adventure stories in just a little bit.
Yeah, I think you teased that in like one of the first episodes.
I did.
Can't believe it.
Dude, I brought this up like 3-4 years ago now, whatever it
Yeah.
is. I'm just like, yeah, well, and when I had Devin Kelly on,
Yeah.
who you kind of used to like indirectly work with, even though you guys worked at different companies.
Yeah.
But and we all went to school together anyway. But like I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna have Big Sean on, and that was like a year ago now anyway. Like it's just been we're both busy.
Yeah, it's
and
tough.
2 states apart. Well, state
now
apart
yeah,
now,
I'm up
but
in introduced as a Massachusetts guy. I'm now a
New
New Hampshire
Hampshire
resident.
Yeah. Have
so-
you changed the license over and everything?
Not
or
yet. No,
stuff?
I've
Okay.
been. So it's one of those things where I moved into my apartment. It took a while because of just life, and then I finally settled in full time, and immediately 2 days later went to Vermont for the solar eclipse.
Oh yeah, dude. Not to get off on a
Yeah.
quick tangent on that, but you got home so late
It-
from that.
okay, so the
like
ride-
that was
yeah.
wild.
The ride to Vermont, I think, took me about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. The ride home took about 8 or 9.
That's
Just
wild.
I've never seen, and this is in the sticks of northern Vermont, New Hampshire. I've never seen traffic like that in my life.
No. I mean, like, even during like major holiday weekends, I don't think they've seen traffic like that.
Yeah,
ever.
I mean I was like, oh, it'll be busy. It'll be like leaf season. It'll be like the fall.
crack,
and
maybe,
it was
yeah.
17,000 times worse than leaf season.
That's awful.
I pulled over and took a nap at one point because I was like, I can't do this. I gotta just wait it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll.
I mean, we also saw an incredible amount of traffic. We went up to Rockwood, which is like 2 hours north of here. Me and a couple of my classmates from my electrical program at KV. And, we had a great time. We ended up bringing
yeah.
a barbecue grill out into the woods. Like, we just parked in a lumber cut and just like, this is where we're watching the eclipse.
That's awesome. Yeah,
but-
mine was a whole thing.
There was one road in, one road out. And so the one road back down here was absolutely swamped. We ended up on the back side of the wrong road and ended up going down a rail bed.
Yeah.
Dude, we had to pull trees out of the
Yeah.
out of the road or out of the rail. It was ridiculous because once we were in, there was no getting back out.
Oh, I got off 93.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going through back roads in northern New Hampshire, Franconia Notch area that I had never heard of. I was like, if I pop a tire or break down, I'm screwed. Like
Well,
nobody's coming to get me. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
That was kind of our same issue. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, so we're on the way back, and since our misadventures in the woods, we thought we were fucked. Like, we were going to be behind everybody, but we had split off from a group of our friends. They had gone through town the regular way and not tried to take the super secret shortcut. But come to find out, us taking the super secret, not so shortcut that we thought screwed us, it cut an hour off our time with the traffic.
Mine was the same way. I cut through all these nonsense windy roads up and down mountains, dirt roads, nobody else there. And I kept trying to get back over to 93 to the main road. And I just even the side roads were blocked. And I found out later that apparently Google Maps had, they have a failsafe to try not to, they essentially thought that the traffic was so bad that Google Maps didn't believe it was real.
No way.
So they didn't report it.
Oh, Jesus.
So you would turn onto a road that was supposedly open,
Clear, and or like where they have like the red or like the orange lines.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there. You just
It wasn't there, and then you're like, okay, this next intersection, I'll take a left. It's so many miles to 93. I'll get back on the highway, and we'll be good. And then that whole road is like stopped. But come to find out, I was driving down on my own. My girlfriend was driving to her friend's back to go to the airport. And I called her after a bunch of moving around. I was like, hey, just so I can see if this works, where are you? And she was like 70 miles behind me. I had shaved, so it still took, several hours more than I thought, but it saved really a ton of time.
That's wild. Yeah, and I mean, like, same difference, on our end. I mean, I thought here we are, like, this is going to, like, add, like, 2 hours to our trip or whatever. No, we cut an hour off.
Yeah.
Not having to go through the traffic, but the snow and shit that we ended up having to drive through ended up burning out a lot of the coolant. We had a diesel, so we had we had a coolant issue. The internal heat temperature for the engine was like over 200 degrees.
Did you
which
have
is
a gallon of water in the car?
Well, so that's the funny thing. After we got back on the main road, we got back into where you can either go straight and come down through like Dover, Foxcroft, and that way up in northern Maine, or you can go through Abbott and cut through Athens, which takes you out into Skowhegan, where I'm originally from, and which. Me being me, I was like, let's take take the shortcut. Well, we got about halfway down the side, the actual decent, back way there, and the truck starts flashing at us, low coolant. I don't think there was any left. So we took the gallon of Poland spring water, plus my Nalgene, plus basically we got all of our drinking water together and jettisoned that and dumped it into the coolant tank.
Yeah, got a big 7-liter engine.
And then come to find out, this other guy saw us pulled off of the side of the road. He pulls over, gives us another gallon of water. So that gets us into town. And then once we get to the gas station, we buy the we bought the coolant that you had to mix with water since we already had a shit ton of water in there.
Perfect,
We
yeah.
just dumped a bunch of the fucking 1-to-1 mix shit and away we went. And then we still ended up, like I said, we got back an hour and a half before our friends in the other car.
There you go.
Got back and, I was home sitting on my couch while you were while everybody was still bumblefucking around the woods.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my God, that's awful.
That was like unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah,
seriously.
So that was the eclipse was soon, like right after I moved in.
Yep.
Got back from the eclipse. There's a little bit more backstory to this, but decided now's the time for my girl and I to go out to Oregon.
Right.
So 2 week
saw
road. So
that
it's like
too.
I moved in and then
Took right back off.
and
again.
then the first 3 weeks to a month of living there, I slept there a total of like 4 nights, and just like haven't had time to do some of the stuff with
normal people things.
changing the
yeah.
license
Yeah, yeah,
license over, getting my registration changed from Mass to New Hampshire, and this, that, the third.
yeah.
So,
Yep. No, hey, that's awesome though. I'm glad you're a little bit closer. I mean, Manchester's a good 2-hour drive. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, it's an
2
hour less
Yeah.
than where I was.
Yeah.
At least.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and you were on the south side. That's what I realized, and I didn't realize actually how much of a pain in the ass rather it is. Talking with you and also our buddy Zach Chapman,
Yeah.
who lives also south of Boston, and I didn't realize what a pain in the ass it was to get like up to Boston or how it can be. You
Yeah,
know,
no, absolutely. It's like,
like being here, it's like, oh, it's right next to you. You know what I mean? But I didn't realize.
and all of a sudden,
not realizing.
not all of a sudden, but the past several years, like there's traffic in Boston at like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And on like Sundays, like, it's where are you people going? But like you run into traffic at weird times now. It's so
Yep.
tough. But yeah, from especially at the wrong time, like I can get from my house to New Hampshire because I can go around 495
Mhm.
in less time than it takes to get to the first town beyond Boston. Which
That's
is
wild.
half the mileage.
Right, yeah, and I mean, as the crow flies, I mean, you can throw a rock, kind of, sort of, standing on a really tall building, but,
I mean,
like,
wind at your back, yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. But no, that's great that you made it up to New Hampshire, and I mean, that's also where we met, and
yeah.
specifically, after taking this political philosophy class, we both found ourselves in the midst of a Cold War class, which I mean is truly a fascinating time period in history. Just to preface, like you see the emergence of the American Empire after and it is an empire. I mean, like that's what we scrambled to do. I mean, we just did it in a little different way than the British had, and I mean, we did it in the 20th century terms, not in like the 18th or 19th century terms.
Yeah, for sure, very different. And NATO, and there's a lot.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I mean, but like, see, and that's why I think we've been so lucky in terms of the scope of history. The last time we fought a major war on U.S. soil was like the Civil War.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
maybe the Mexican American.
yeah, no, if you want to call it with a foreign, not fighting ourselves. And I mean, the last time we really fought an empire was in 1812 against the British. And you know what I mean? So
Well,
I guess,
we sent guys to fight the Ottomans.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
that
but-
wasn't here.
but yeah, well, that's my whole point. I guess is what I'm getting at, Sean, is that Europe is in result of having 2 world wars. Entire generations are lost. Entire cultures and cities and ways of life are devastated or erased, depending on where you are.
Infrastructure, roads bombed out, bridges bombed out.
But the United States is sitting pretty because we didn't have not a single bomb go off on U.S. soil,
Sure.
but you really didn't have it. I mean, the most damage was in Pearl Harbor, and that was
Yeah.
4 years prior by the time the war wraps up. You know what I mean? And so we are sitting here, we're very pretty with corporations and factories, and everything's still very much intact. And on top of that, a newfound war machine. The U.S. military that's where you get the creation of the modern U.S. military as well,
Yeah,
which is
And
still
then,
causing problems for the people of Cuba.
Yeah.
I mean, as we heard
That's
a
for
lot
sure.
about, which we'll unpack in just a minute. But you take this class on the Cold War at St. A's, and it's actually taught by 2 professors. Which shout out to Professor Mazer and Pajikowski,
Good guys.
two great guys. And also just to thank you for them for taking a bunch of college degenerates to a foreign country.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of work between them and all the staff to get get everything cleared paperwork wise.
Oh yeah. And I mean, but that's what you saw too. And I mean, like, not to get into the political situation, but like, yeah, I mean, you had the Obama administration have a different policy on Cuba for like the first time in a long time, and compared to any U.S. administration prior to that. I mean, they really opened it up, and that's what really kind of allowed us to do the trip.
Yeah, and even with that, it was still a result of
Very strict too.
it was still a result of, we had an educational, I don't know if I don't know if it would qualify as an educational visa.
I think that's how we got in though, because you couldn't get in for like a leisure or like a vacation type thing.
No, not as an American. You have
Yeah.
to, I mean, I think if you're an American citizen, you might even back then have been able to like go to Canada and fly down.
Yeah, you could.
I think I think the ban is American imposed. It's not Cuban imposed. It never was
Yeah.
that I know of.
Yeah, no.
So you could always, I mean, you could go to another country and go down there, but to go direct from the U.S. to Cuba, yeah, you needed like we couldn't go, the school could go.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. If we were not students in this class, we would have not been allowed to step foot on the island.
Yeah, that's actually, I found out about the class. They sent out an email saying, essentially take this class and get the opportunity to take a spring break trip to Cuba. And I was like, yeah, Cold War is cool anyway. Like, oh, that's, two good reasons.
Yeah,
So,
no, it really was. And I mean, we had a good class for the most part too. On top of that, I mean, had a pretty decent group for the most part, which we'll unpack some of those antics later. But it was just they allowed us. I mean, but that's what changed everything. We were able to now fly directly from the United States to Cuba. We left Logan, flew to like South or North Carolina, and then puddle
Charlotte,
jumped,
I think.
and then puddle jumped from there to Havana proper. I guess Sean, when you walked off the plane for the first time and took your first couple strolls, and once we got into Havana, I guess what were your first impressions of the Cuban island and the Cuban people?
So it's a little bit of a double tiered question
Yeah.
because that was the first time I left the country.
Oh shit.
I had never been out of the U.S.
So that's like a triple whammy then.
Yeah, in some ways. So, it's some of the I almost wish I had been to somewhere else in the Caribbean or some other places to compare it to versus just having Cuba in the US.
Right.
But it was it's there was a lot of propaganda of, as to be expected.
Right.
Pictures of Fidel all over the place. Che Guevara, some of the other members of the Communist Party down there, everywhere. Billboards, restaurants, the airport. So that was, it was expected. It's not like I didn't think there was going to be,
Right.
I didn't expect to be greeted by that, but it is, a little jarring.
Yeah, to see that type of stuff when we're like, I don't know, like that stuff you see in the history books. You know what I mean? Like that's how I felt. I was like, damn, this is stuff I have never really seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been to like I've never been to like a North Korea, or I've never been to like an actually really oppressive country.
China.
Yeah,
or,
none of those. Yeah. Or even Russia to a larger extent. Like,
Yeah.
never been to like any of like the post-Soviet or like, I guess you call them communist countries of the 20th century.
Yeah, so it was different, and I remember one of the things that was depressing was the area where we stayed was quite nice and whatnot,
Yes.
but the bus ride, was it a bus ride or a cab?
It was a bus.
The
Yeah.
bus ride we took from the airport to into kind of downtown touristy area where we stayed, definitely passed by a lot of slums and like you see on TV when they go to a poverty-stricken area, tin roofs and
Yeah.
plywood walls and whatnot. So
I mean, kind of like when you look at like the barrios in like Rio de Janeiro or something like that, for people who are trying to picture this.
yeah, or if
like
you see some of the footage that came out of Haiti in the past.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Past year, I think. Haiti, I think, is almost unilaterally worse off than most places in Cuba. But
Yeah.
just the to say the physical infrastructure and
Yeah.
the design of a lot of the buildings was very similar.
Yeah.
So that was a little depressing. And then that's when you asked about the first impression off the airport, it was kind of a little sad. It was
Yeah.
yeah, but it did turn around getting into the nicer part of the city and
Yeah. No, definitely.
yeah, it's an interesting place, man. It really is. The architecture, it's it's a strange mix of like Eastern Bloc brutalist concrete cubes,
Commie blocks. Yeah.
yeah, and then old Spanish kind of Caribbean style architecture like you'd see in a Puerto Rico or in South America.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of it's deteriorating. Some of it's very well preserved.
That was one thing that surprised me was how deteriorated a lot of the buildings were. Because like you think about like all these like brightly painted places like mint greens and pastel blues and
Yeah,
like that type
lavender,
of stuff.
purple,
And but
there's-
like every just about every building that you saw could have been hit with a coat of paint or some plaster or whatever. Like could use a facelift.
yeah, but I expected that I guess a little bit more than you. But
Yeah, that's fair.
Again, it's a little sad to see, but they they don't have the resources. It's a lot of that's the embargo, American inflicted.
Yep.
But then their own system also doesn't get it to where it needs to
Well,
go.
having two currencies doesn't exactly help your economy either.
Yeah,
Especially like one's backed by the euro and the U.S. dollar, and the other and in the Chinese, Well,
well, I don't know
currency,
what
but-
it's backed by, but isn't.
But you know what I'm saying?
I think
like,
I think even still the value is just whatever the American dollar is.
Right.
It's basically
well, because it's
1-to-1.
backed by it's backed by foreigner currency. I mean, that's what it's exchanged for. So I guess what I'm getting at here, guys, is that in Cuba, like I've talked about on previous episodes, they have two different types of money. They have the currency that the local population, the citizens use, and then they have the currency that the foreigners or travelers and tourists use.
Yeah, the kooks and the coops.
Kooks and the coops.
Yeah.
But funny enough, the Cuban currency is for the locals is a lot prettier.
Yeah,
It's a lot. It's a lot more artistic.
It's only worth about a quarter of the
Yeah, it's not worth shit, but
aesthetic value is
very
I
high.
guess something. Sure.
Yeah, no. Well, that's the thing. You'd see people try to like. The tour guides even talked about this quite a bit. Like people trading, this currency that's worth a lot more for a piece of currency that's worth a lot less.
Well, that's one of the things they tell you to watch out for
Yeah.
is don't look at a price and pay with the wrong thing. Like
Yeah.
you're paying 4 times as much for the same thing.
Right. Yeah. No. Well, that's speaking of paying for things. That's one thing that caught me off guard was how cheap certain goods were, i.e., well, the stuff that they actually make there, the rum. I mean, you could buy a bottle of top shelf rum, what I'd consider top shelf, for like $6.
I think I paid 3.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
depending on if you got white or dark
Dark,
rum
yeah.
or whatever. But Havana Club,
Yeah, good stuff.
great
Shout out
stuff.
to Havana Club.
there's a bunch of other couple other rum brands too that come out of there.
Yeah,
that are
well, I think-
fantastic.
I think they still import that to Canada, where I was just up in Canada a couple
Oh, no
months
shit,
ago,
yeah.
and it was not $3 or $6.
No, it's not.
single digits.
It's not. No. Well, actually, funny enough, when I was in Ireland, I was at the Temple Bar, the world famous, Temple Bar,
Very
one of the
nice.
most iconic bars in the world, in my opinion. And what do I spot on the top shelf? A bottle of Havana Club. And being a traditionalist, I guess when I go to a lot of places, I was expecting to have a pour of Guinness that night, but when in reality, I ended up having
We got Guinness at home.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
that's what I'm saying. I was like, I was like, I will take a rum and Coke, please, and
that's all.
and on top of that, you're getting the Coca-Cola with the real sugar, cane sugar
Yeah.
too. So double whammy.
Well, it's one of those things that to think of. We're the weird ones for not having Cuban cigars, not having Cuban rum.
We are actually,
Not
yeah, no,
our
you're
people.
right.
Our people don't go vacation in Cuba, but like if you're in Canada or you're in Europe, it's like, oh, where are you, like we're taking the family down to a resort, beach resort. Where you going? Cuba.
That's a normal thing. It's like they're Florida.
Yeah, or it's more. It's like
Yeah,
their Dominican Republic,
Yeah. No, like seriously, yeah.
Punta Cana, but
Yeah.
they go to
Or they're Cancun, yeah.
Pinar del Rio.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, that's the cool thing about, that's when we actually spent a day at one of those resort type places, all you can eat, all you can drink, beach type places, and a lot of the people there were French, German, English, and the like, and you saw that a lot of the time when you went out for the nightlife too. Aside from the the locals that were there, you also had a lot of Europeans.
Yeah, plenty of foreigners, just very few Americans.
Yeah, and
Like,
those that, yeah,
We're
spoke-
so American centric for the most part here that oh, like Cuba, it's got maybe exotic mystique. It might not be the right word, but it's got a little bit of a mystique to it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it
it's-
definitely does.
like even I'm sure you've come back and told people like, oh, I went to Cuba. Like
They're like, whoa,
Yeah,
it's like you went to the moon.
yeah, people react.
I mean, given it's hard to get
Yeah.
into, but
No, for sure. But like if you say that in Canada, it's like, oh, cool.
sick. I did that last year too. So
Yeah.
what's your point? Yeah, but here, yeah, I know. The second you get across the border down here, it's like, oh, really? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, no, seriously.
Or
like,
Cuban cigars are like such a big deal here, and they're good.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say they're not
No, they are
excellent
good.
quality, but they have like this elevated status in the U.S. where Canadians are like, yeah, it's a Cuban cigar. Like, go down to the gas station, get a pack. Like,
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, like, even like the little cigarillos that they make and everything. Yeah, it's commonplace up there. Whereas, like, here's fucking JFK the day before he signs the embargo goes into effect. He buys all remaining Cuban cigars left in the United States. Like, that's just, that's
yeah,
us.
yeah, sounds about right.
It sounds, yeah, that tracks. But no, in all reality though, it's just like weird how, and that's the one thing that they did. We had to go to a couple lectures while we were in country for it to
Justify
count.
the
They
educational
justify
visa.
the educational trip, but they were all people from the University of Havana. We didn't actually get to have the lectures at the University of Havana, which I wonder why. Honestly, like that's
I thought it was one of their satellite buildings that we went
yeah.
to.
I mean, it might have been, but like we went by like the actual university itself though while we were there. But regardless, it definitely could have been. I don't even remember like where those buildings were. Like I couldn't tell you like what building purposes. I thought that they were like EF, like the people that we went with,
Mm.
like the tour group. But anyway, regardless though, we had a couple different lectures. One was from a philosophy professor, and he just basically gave us shit for being A, American, and B, like, we helped you guys during the American Revolution, so in turn, you guys kind of owe us a lot. That was I mean, from my memory, that was the gist of the conversation of the lecture.
Yeah, I remember a little bit of that.
I mean, the history was fascinating. If everything that he said was true, I mean, yeah, the Spanish did play a good sized role, including the Cuban people in helping out. But at the same time,
Yeah, it's and maybe it was the other lecture, the more history based one, but I remember one of the professors echoing kind of the sentiment of a lot of the locals that like we love Americans. We
yeah, it
just
was the economic business professor that was talking to us about that. I
yeah.
liked his. I liked his lecture as
A
well.
lot of the locals and him, we love Americans. We just wish your government would stop fucking us.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and I think that's the
I
sentiment.
wish the government would stop fucking me too, buddy. Like,
Yeah, same brother. Like, we have more in common than you think.
yeah, they had at the museum the mural where they made fun of all the presidents.
Yeah, Teddy
It-
Roosevelt and
It
the
was
Bushes.
the Bushes and Reagan. Yeah,
Reagan.
Reagan was like a dumb cowboy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bush was reading an upside down book,
Yeah,
and it was like, thanks for guaranteeing the security of the revolution. By giving them basically like a villain to rally around.
yeah. No,
And I
that's
was like-
that's very
And
true.
I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Fuck those guys.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, and not even to just like, I don't know, get into two things with like modern politics, but it's like, and I kind of understand why they do it with like Ronnie Reagan because, like, I mean, even still today, the modern Republican Party still idolizes Ronald Reagan to a point.
Oh my,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not trying to go down that road, but like, I mean, it's still relevant. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they hold him up like he's Julius Caesar.
Yeah, no, dude. And seriously, I mean, I actually just funny enough had that conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago too. They're like, yeah, they just like talk about like the 1980s, like it was yesterday. I was like, it was actually a long time ago.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
grand scheme of things, and a lot's changed since then.
I
But,
saw something online about how the Republicans love to talk about the U.S. military and the might of the military and stuff, and they always use like the first Gulf War as their example, and it's like, yeah, we really beat up the Iraqis there, but
Yeah.
it was also 30 plus years
to
ago.
go, yeah, no, exactly, and I mean that's kind of what we're getting. I guess to tie back to Cuba though, that's kind of like what that professor was getting at. He goes like, a lot's changed.
You
Like
guys
the
are
times-
stuck in the past.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. I mean, in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
I mean, like the truth of the matter being is that like there's no reason why we can't give them blue jeans and bars of soap and commercial goods that they desperately need, and we can't also have a goods exchange. I guess the big sticking point though, and I guess this required more research after we came back. Part of the reason that the embargo still isn't over with yet completely and that we don't trust them 100% is that they're still very cozy with the Russian government, and they let the Russian intelligence services do a lot to spy on us via the Cuban position.
Well, who else are they gonna? Who else are they gonna
I
call?
know.
We're
I'm
not going.
I'm not saying that
Yeah.
makes it. I'm not saying it makes it right or wrong. I'm just saying I get both sides. I guess
Yeah.
I get both sides
I
of
think
it.
there's actually that was in the news recently. There's Russian deployment in
Yeah.
Cuba right now.
Yeah, and then they sailed like as close as you can get to the United States without being.
Saw that in
yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, and like the Bahamas and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
That little channel, well, not channel, but you know what I'm saying. I guess it's like the start of the Bermuda Triangle. But no, actually, we flew through part of that.
Probably
on our
yeah.
way to Cuba, which we were like, oh shit.
Well, isn't one corner Miami or the Keys?
Yeah. It's just like, oh shit. Like, hope we come back.
Don't nobody fact check me.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
no. But no, it was our first night there was really interesting when we pulled up day one, because like we got like the whole like, this is how you survived, don't do stupid shit in Cuba talk, from the tour group.
Yeah,
And then
it wasn't anything fucking drastic.
and
but
then we proceeded that night to go against exactly one of the things they told us not to do. Was when you have a guy standing outside of a bar on a street corner, don't go with him when he tells you to come with me.
did we fall? I thought we just
Yeah.
went, I thought we just like dipped into the
So
bar to grab a drink. We didn't go. We didn't go anywhere. With
yeah,
him.
but we didn't go anywhere, but he was standing outside the bar encouraging people, and he saw us, and his eyes started to he saw money signs, you know what I
greenbacks for
mean?
sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
he saw greenbacks. And I guess like, not that we were being unsafe, but we're sitting at this bar, and this Cuban guy came in, he came inside with us. And also to specify too, in Cuba they have a major race problem too. They have the Afro-Cubans and the Cubans, and they're pretty racist towards the Afro-Cubans.
Yeah, I don't know the history. I don't know much. I
right.
don't know enough about this to speak on it knowledgeably, but like it did seem like, to look at it, the like the guys who own the house, the family that owned the house,
Yeah.
were lighter
Light-skinned
complexion,
Cubans,
and then like the people picking up trash on the side of the road and doing kind of the lower status, probably lower paying jobs tended to be much darker.
Yeah, more like
So-
like they look like Dominican, like more Dominican dark skinned folks. Than it was just weird, you know what I mean? Like how they have like, they're such a small country, you know what I mean? It's like you guys have been there
and their
together for
system's supposed to be all about
equality.
egalitarian. Yeah,
and-
everybody's the same.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised by that. But this guy, was out there, hustling on the street corner basically, and saw us go into the bar, came in with us, and obviously had something worked out with the bartender. Because like he was talking to us about all these med students, and how
Yeah.
he had all these med students that and it was like, this is sounding suspiciously like you're trying to offer us prostitution, sir. Are you
Yeah.
soliciting us prostitution? Because it sounds an awful like you're trying to solicit us prostitution.
Yeah, I'm not here to accuse anybody of anything, but this
It's kind of
sounds a little abnormal.
Yeah, and so I said to the guy, I said, we have a saying in the United States: when something's too good to be true, it usually is, and then someone ends up having to pay for it.
Yeah,
I remember
right.
saying that to the guy verbatim, and he smiled at me because he knew I was picking up on what he was putting
Onto him a
down
little bit, yeah.
onto him a little bit. And I looked at, it was myself, Sean, and like I think maybe two other guys, Zeph being one of them, and I think Josh.
I can't remember.
But anyway, regardless of that fact, we started to make the move out after we finished our drinks. We're like, we're gonna go finish up the night somewhere else. And didn't they try to like barricade you in there and make you pay for the guy's drink or something like that?
Well, yeah, I had to. So I basically, had to pay for like you, me, and whoever else we were with, the 4 or 5 of us. I had, it wasn't much. It was $15 or something.
Yeah.
But I had to pay for the free drink that we got offered to come in. Like
It's like, and I mean, like,
I don't know how it happened. I must have went to the bathroom or something. It came out and we were leaving. And
Yeah, I don't remember, to be honest with you. I don't remember how we. I mean,
I remember the story.
We just said we had to get out of there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it
we
was
gotta
just
go.
like, yeah, we just got to go. And so we were a little bit more on a heightened approach. We went to actually down to one of the bigger like international hotels and finished out our night there. But on the walk back, you got to see all the different sides of Havana. Around the area where we were, that was pretty nice. But also, like, we walked through some spots that were kind of rough. Like you were saying as we were
There were a
driving in,
lot of prostitutes.
Yeah, there were,
There were
surprisingly.
a lot of prostitutes on
Yeah.
the road.
I mean, you go over to other like European countries and they're out at night, but like,
Yeah, it
or
was,
even even here, they're not like they don't exist.
I've never
but-
seen such a concentration of people who were clearly
Women
ladies
of the night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
It's like chicken of the cave. Oh my god. But in all seriousness, though, day 2 started off on a much different note. Got to see like the Museum of the Revolution and a lot of the historical like classic sites that you see in Havana, whether it be like in a travel magazine or in a documentary or really anything that has to do with Cuban history. We pretty much heard about it. Eventually made our way out of Havana to the Bay of Pigs and another couple surrounding towns that There was one town we stopped at that I can't ever remember the name of. It's also kind of hard to pronounce, but it had changed. Remember, it had been like a French town, and you could see some of the French architecture, and then the Spanish had taken it back over. We stopped at a couple
Was
really.
it Cienfuegos?
It could have been Cienfuegos. I don't remember, to be completely honest with you, because we stopped at a couple little towns on the way to Trinidad. After the Bay of Pigs, and we kind of basically went out of Havana and then like kind of make it a loop back towards Havana.
Down
to
to
get
an
if you
picture
experience.
the island, we started in Havana, which is the northwest side of the country. The Bay of Pigs is on the southern part of the island, a little bit further east. And I don't know what town the Bay of Pigs. We didn't stay there. We stayed at a small town that was close by. Like we had very nice accommodations almost.
Yeah, we did.
It was, similar to like an Airbnb. Obviously, Airbnb wasn't the company, but it was, people renting out their homes.
Casa Particulares.
Yeah, very nice. Well taken care of.
And to have the privilege of owning a Casa Particulares, you had to be in good with the government, or in good with one of the government entities or the bureaucracies.
Essentially, I think one guy, the guy who owned the place we stayed in Havana, was
he was an exec for Habanos.
He worked at the cigar factory,
Yeah.
but he didn't just work at the cigar factory.
He was like one of the big bosses.
Up high at the cigar factory.
Like, got to shake hands with Fidel and Raul. He was showing us pictures of him with both Castros.
Yeah.
He was a really cool guy. Didn't speak much English, but we had some really good conversation. And if you like to have like the very authentic, I don't think we could have had any more of an authentic experience, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's probably tough to say because it definitely was catered and
right. But like at the same time, like just I'm talking those little instances where you got to actually like have like a real conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I talked to one of the security guys.
Like the guys that were like our security guards for the house.
I was doing well with my Spanish back then.
You were. Dude,
I surprised myself with that.
You got us through some shit. I will say that now.
Yeah, I surprised myself with that, but
my Spanish is muy mal.
Yeah, mine is now atrophied pretty bad, but
yeah.
At the time I was doing okay. And I was talking to one guy and he said in Spanish, essentially, I was trying to get some people's honest opinions about the party and the Castros and whatnot. And he goes, one day he's your friend, and then the next day all of a sudden he's not your friend anymore.
Yeah.
And we were alone. It was a small group of us, but we were outside the house at night. There was nobody around. The one thing I will say about that I was expecting more of is I never felt like I was being like surveilled on.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? Where people talk about, like, my aunt went to East Germany in the 80s, and she was like, it just like between the cops in the corner watching, like you're always like looking around, like where's the camera, where's the microphone?
Yeah.
Whereas Cuba didn't feel like that. Maybe part of it is it's a little bit more less well off economically, and it's like they don't have probably nobody's paying to maintain a sophisticated surveillance network in most places. I'm sure it exists.
So I guess the only thing I will say, I think that they don't put as much of their time in surveillance on the foreigners as they do in their own people. I know that I've watched a couple interesting things that we didn't see when we were there, but they talked about like, this is going to be a kind of not off topic, but on topic. They talked about like video gaming in Cuba. They talked about their lack of, because they don't have any internet. Wi-Fi there, you have to go by like one of the like you don't have Wi-Fi at your house.
You got to buy it. Actually, as I was cleaning out my room for the move, I found I brought back. You buy a little.
It was like
card.
The old phone cards back in the day.
It has a code on the back, and you have to find somewhere that's a hub. Hotels were the big ones that we went to when we were there because they all had Wi-Fi.
And the cool thing, you'd be sitting at the bar at the hotel, like just casually, maybe looking at things on your phone, send an email real quick. But you'd look out across the street on all the the curbs, and any hour of the day you'd have like Cuban people on their phones using the internet because that's where they'd have to, or sitting there on their laptops on like the street corner.
Yeah, because you have to just get where there's a network. It's very rare.
But anyway, I was watching this documentary. I think Vice might have done it back when Vice was still cool.
Yeah.
Back when Shane Smith was still in charge of Vice.
That was awesome.
And he was actually still doing like stories and stuff. I always liked his style of reporting. But regardless, they sent some people down to Cuba to talk with these guys about how they basically created their own like in-city like network for gaming. strictly for gaming. It has no like external, like you can't like get outside of Cuba, but internally it's basically like having like a big like
A
like
giant LAN party.
yeah, that's exactly what I was about. Like having a giant LAN party, and they were talking about how like they've been shut down. They have to be careful. Like if they had any type of access to the outside world, they'd be screwed. You know what I mean?
Probably.
Like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
like because I remember like just trying to like update like a playlist or something on Spotify. There's no Spotify access in Cuba. You
Yeah,
know,
I was
like,
trying to post pictures to Facebook, and that didn't really work.
yeah, there's really no Facebook in Cuba. You know, it's just interesting. You know, like again, I guess the surveillance isn't so much on us; it's more so they just want to keep folks under the thumb. You
Yeah.
know?
Although, to be fair, like you said, it was a relatively authentic experience. We were in people's
Yeah.
homes, and so granted, to own a home, you're in good graces.
But he was upfront with that. I feel like he didn't. He said it in very few words. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like basically what I got from that was like the only reason I have like he had a car, he had a Toyota, like a little Yaris or something like that.
Yeah,
But
most people don't have this. I remember. Him saying
he's
that,
just like and a modern car at that, like a fuel injected like. And that's the other thing that people, think a lot about when they think of Cuba is like these old classic cars. Well, these old classic cars are being kept alive by Japanese and Russian parts.
Yeah, I think it is mostly Russian because none of them have a gas engine. None of them have an original. Like
No.
everyone we got, it's you expect they turn the key and you hear like the Chevy V8 sound, and you get the putter of like a Polish diesel engine from the 80s.
Yeah.
Because it's the shell of a classic Chevy Bel Air, and
It's a 1967 Pontiac in physical form only, not in terms of actual like
the
mechanics.
probably not even the frame.
No.
Not
Just the body.
not
Literally
the
just the body.
It's the shell of an old classic, American 50s, 60s, 40s vehicle.
Yeah. Which is kind of surprising, and that was the other thing. I guess it's
It stings a little as someone who likes
older. I
muscle
love
cars,
classic
yeah.
cars. Yeah, I mean that, and so that's what like, you hear these stories of guys trying to like go down to Cuba and like procure these cars, but come to find out they probably wouldn't want to do that at all.
There would be very little point to it.
Yeah.
Unless you want to have the shell of a Bel Air and beat around in an old diesel that you probably can't get parts for here.
Probably not. I mean, maybe Polish.
I mean, you
some
can get
Polish,
damn near
yeah.
everything here if you really try, but
Want it, yeah.
it's probably a bastard
Yeah.
to
It's probably and you'll have to pay a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's true.
get it imported.
But yeah, no, we had a really unique experience, and I think authentic to a point. I mean, like you got to go see people make the cigars. Like that was just the normal day at work for them. They weren't trying to put on like a show for us or nothing like that.
Yeah, they probably felt like zoo animals.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they probably do. But like, going there and watching people like hand roll, it's like I jokingly, like you have like these rappers and stuff that have like professional blunt rollers,
Yeah.
and it's like, you gotta go down to Snoop Dogg's got to go down to Cuba and get one of these like,
Yeah. Hire somebody who's
these
worked in that
consuelas
factory.
to come fucking
Yeah.
roll.
No, that'll get them. That'll get them over.
Yeah, I
I
know,
don't
right?
know how
I mean, but when we got to the Bay of Pigs and that town next to it, it made me realize like how bad the infrastructure in the country is. Like the electrical poles, like you could go lean on one of their concrete electrical poles and the thing looked like it wanted to fall over.
just disintegrates. As you
Yeah.
touch it. There was that one kind of skyscraper that was.
Oh, one of the commie block type buildings that was on
that
the
was
ocean
at
there.
2 blocks. It was like 2 stilts, and they were connected with floors across.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to walk anywhere near the thing. It looks like it was.
Didn't we
it looked
walk
like it was-
underneath
We
it?
did
Yeah.
eventually, but somebody had to talk me into it.
Yeah.
Like it looked like at any moment they were ready to just split.
Well, I mean, you could see the rebar sticking through the concrete and stuff. Like,
Yeah, there were dogs running around and stuff.
dude,
like-
well, that was the best part about staying in the outside of the Bay of Pigs was the fucking Cuban roof dogs, dude. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
We pull up to where the little houses, they're all right next door to each other. We pull up to where we're going to be staying, and like, 2 of us are in this house, 2 of us are in this house, and 4 of us are in another house. And across the street, you look up, and there are these just dogs just hanging out on these roofs.
On the roof.
And you're like, how the fuck did he get up there? You know what I mean?
climbed.
Like, there was a lot more questions than there were answers. In
Yeah,
that one.
I get again. That's another thing that I haven't. I have minimal international. I've been to Cuba, the U.S., and Canada. I have very little international travel experience. But I think that's another thing that's like not having that is kind of an American thing.
Yeah.
Like apparently, from what people tell me, you go to a lot of countries, and like Istanbul, Turkey is famous for having there's cats.
Yeah.
There's just street cats
Yeah.
everywhere, and a lot of places have. Like Puerto Rico, I hear is very similar. In South America, there's just stray dogs running around.
Well,
And it's fascinating for me to see, like, if you let dogs live in the wild, like all different breeds, how do they kind of come out, and
Yeah.
most of them were that kind of probably 20 to 30 pound, like relatively small, beige. They
Kind of pointy eared. Yeah.
you let them go long enough, and they're mutts to the maximum degree, but they
Yeah.
almost develop their own little breed.
They're kind of cute though. Some of them are really friendly. I mean,
Yeah, they probably learn real well how to beg. And,
yeah. Oh, I'm sure they do. I mean,
yeah.
that's a huge part of their survival. And I mean, I guess the kind of dark side to that was our tour guide was telling us about how after the Soviet Union collapsed, there was a massive food shortage in Cuba. Apparently, they bring in a lot of food. They don't have a lot of like. I'd say their nutrition is interesting. You know what I mean in terms of like what they have access to for food. It's very limited.
Yeah, well, their biggest crops are tobacco and sugar,
Yeah.
which they're both kind of cash crops. And sugar, obviously, you can use to make food, but it's not wheat, it's not corn,
Yeah,
it's not a staple
nutritious,
food.
right? And so like they eat a lot of fish, and then the weird thing is, and I'm just gonna say it, but what I'm getting to, guys, is after the Soviet Union collapsed, though, they had to eat the dogs. They're used to not they ate a lot of the dogs.
Yeah,
They told us that straight up. He goes like, yeah, like we ate the dogs. We had
Well,
to.
that was their lifeline, basically cut off.
Well, I mean, it's no different than like when Bismarck surrounded Paris and they break into the Paris Zoo and they're eating zebras and
That's what you do.
like,
You get desperate. You eat what's
gotta
around.
do what you gotta do, I guess. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't.
but we had pork when we were there, and I didn't see a single. I saw horses, I saw goats, I saw very skinny ass cows, but I did not see a single pig while we were in Cuba, and we got fed pork a couple times.
Yeah,
I just have questions.
mystery
That's
meat.
all. Yeah, yeah. I mean, not that we're, I'm not saying the United States is perfect with you. I mean, U.S. food and drug, we have all of our own problems.
Yeah.
Believe you me.
No, that's why. Listen, that's one of the first things I did getting to Manchester is find the local farm stand.
Yep.
Find the local, people who produce eggs, people who produce everything. Like, let me get my stuff from where I know,
From
like,
Farmer Dan or whatever. Yeah, no, right, direct from
There's the
source.
cow. He's in the field. Here's the milk. It's in the fridge. I can see one or the other.
Yep.
This is going to be good stuff. It didn't get it didn't come from Wyoming and get frozen and put on a truck. And
Like, not to get too far off on a tangent, but I've actually talked about having like local food or like going back to local food sourcing. Like, why don't we have like, even if you don't do it like state by state, like have more regional. Like, yeah, certain stuff you can't grow in certain places, but like greenhouse technology's come a pretty long way. Like
Yeah.
up in Madison, Maine, we have backyard farms tomatoes. They grow tomatoes year round up there. I'm not saying it's the most energy efficient thing at all times, but like that's a plant you can't grow in Maine in the wintertime, that's for sure.
nah, not without
You know what I mean? Like
sophisticated setup.
hydroponics or whatever, like, and that's fine. But like, why not have like a like if you're talking about like beef and cheese or something like that? Why not have like a New England? Have Maine and New Hampshire covered by a couple farms. Or I'm generalizing here.
Yeah.
Have Massachusetts have its own because that's a pretty big population center, and then maybe Connecticut and Rhode Island do something together. You know what I mean? Like localizing stuff so that it's like, yeah, there's no reason we should be shipping beef from, like you said, like Wyoming or wherever they have these big slaughter yards. Like, come to find out, it's bad for the cows, it's bad for the meat, and it's bad for us.
Well, that's the thing is that's one of the strong motivations behind it is like the factory farms are just like.
And they ruin like if they're growing crops, they don't rotate their crops.
They suck all the nitrogen out of the soil.
Yeah, all the nutrients in the soil is just gone. Like I said, there's a reason the native ancestors rotated what they grew.
Yeah, and I think we'll actually loop back to this
a
little bit later
Yeah.
on. But that's I'm trying to do it personally and just build a network of here's where to source vegetable. Actually, I signed up for something that I never heard of until a few weeks ago called CSA.
I've never heard of that.
It's community supported agriculture.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And basically, I paid a flat fee to this farm in Goffstown, New Hampshire.
Yep.
And every Tuesday now, I go pick up like a set amount of vegetables. And so I think that I did a little bit of reading online. I think technically I'm now a part owner of that farm.
No shit.
For
I know what you mean.
couple $100 or whatever I paid.
Yeah. It's like a co-op type thing.
It's almost. Yeah, that's a good way to
Well, that's what
describe
I
it.
love about where you just were not too many months ago. Vermont, it's real big on that and how they do their food up there.
Yeah,
a lot of farm to table shit. A lot of the restaurants you go to. that aren't chains. You know what I mean? Our farm
Yeah,
to table.
New Hampshire has a lot of it too. I'm sure Maine probably
we're
does as well.
we're big
but,
on it. I
yeah.
mean, like we're big on organics too.
That was one of the big motivators to get out of Massachusetts and up here. Is,
Yeah.
I mean, it especially in like where I am is a little bit more, or where I was is a little bit more rural, and there's some around, but it's not on the scale that it is in Maine or Vermont or New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's the one thing about northern New England specifically is that we're like, I don't know, very like, I guess you can call them, like granola, like down to earth, by the earth, for the earth type shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely once you get away
This
from
is where the farmland is.
Yeah, once you get away from the population centers, I think that's much more accepted, and practiced too.
Yeah. Like people in the city just have no idea. Like what the
No, a lot of them don't. I mean, like some folks, you got to give them credit. They go out and see it, and they have a better understanding. But a lot of the people at the and that's the sad thing. Like you can see, like a lot of the majorities, like like when they say shit like, "Oh, like a majority of the U.S. population can't find the United States on a map." Like you or I are like, "There's no fucking way," but it's actually true. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's kind of like that,
yeah
type of thing on a different level.
It's getting bad.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, like, that goes back to education and things. But speaking of our own education, again, like I said, we did learn a lot in Cuba, but we also got to have a lot of fun, too. Specifically, they had, and if you've talked with me in any state of being since I've come back from Cuba, I've probably told you about the club in the cave.
Yeah, Discoteca Las Cuevas.
Yeah. I love how you remember that. That's awesome. But basically, like, I say what I mean, folks, is that there was a literal club in a cave.
Yeah, on the side of the mountain. The stairs, you had to be like a mountain goat to get down. It was
seriously.
Like,
all stone. I mean, they had railings and shit, but like, our tour guide at the time, he was an interesting dude. So we didn't. Yeah, he was a lunatic actually, and I'm actually. But when we got back to Havana, that was the first thing I was glad that we got rid of him because that dude was like, he's kind of a liability. Like the stories, if even half of what he said, the guy, I'll just put it this way, the guy was a sexual deviant. Like. He's telling us these fucking stories, and again, nothing.
We met the guy 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, we met the guy 20 minutes ago, and he's telling us about like his exploits. And I mean, all legal from what I understood of it. Nothing like trafficked or anything like that.
It doesn't make him like a bad guy.
Doesn't make him a bad guy, but he was just like,
this guy's out there.
You're sharing these stories with these college kids about your sexual deviancy, like hitting on Europeans and South Americans and like people on vacation. The yacht keeper's wife type.
Hey man,
shit.
get it how you can get it.
I mean, you get it as you can get it, but he's telling us telling us these stories, but then he's like, you know what? He goes, you guys are coming with me tonight. We're going to the cave.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? Like, so we had gone out as a group to like this really old courtyard, and this is in the city of Trinidad at this point. We had done some hiking previously in the day, hiked to a waterfall, which was pretty sick. But talk about humid. Holy fuck. I was sweating buckets hiking down there.
Yeah, when did we go? I mean, I didn't think it was like oppressive. It was hot.
Yeah, it was gross.
Was it February we were there?
February, March, yeah. Which was actually like not their biggest like tourism season,
Yeah, I'm sure it gets.
But regardless,
miserable this time
though, getting back to the Trinidad stuff, like we were out in this courtyard, we all went out and had a couple drinks and listened to some live music, and we're just like having a real chill evening. And then me, and this guy Zeph, who also went to school with us, ended up getting talked into going to this cave and going clubbing.
I thought there were a few more of us.
No, there was just the three of us. Yep. And which creates an interesting part for the story later on when we actually finally left the cave.
I got lost.
Yeah, that was where I was going with that eventually. So we're in the cave, we're having a great time, and so like to give folks the idea of like what type of music was playing, like this is like 2017 at this point. So like I remember, Rick Ross and Skrillex had just come out with Purple Lamborghini.
Yeah,
so it's like that time period. So you got some good dancing music.
Yeah, it was like they played, American music, and
like Diplo and like I don't know,
it was like
more rave music.
The music, it was bass thumping.
Yeah.
It
was cool though.
Booty shaking ass music.
Yeah, I know it was good, and there were asses shaking. It was a good time. I mean, people were dancing.
The liquor was flowing. The asses were shaking.
Yeah. I mean, I probably told you about this after, but I ended up meeting one of the producers that worked for Top Gear. He was on vacation.
Really? Yes,
he was there when Jeremy Clarkson punched the guy in the face. Yeah. Like apparently that was like one of his guys he worked with, because also being a producer on the show. I was like, no shit. And I go, like, he goes, but like those 3 guys are like legends. Like, no one's gonna take them down. He goes, I wouldn't be surprised if they got another, TV deal. And then lo and behold, like a couple months later, they ended up on Amazon.
Oh, the guy who got hit probably deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, like Jeremy Clarkson was like voted like the sexiest man in England or the United Kingdom like last year.
Was he actually?
Yeah, I think it was started as a joke. But
Yeah,
I
fuck.
think
What do they look like
actually,
over there?
Well,
Yeah.
bunch of pasty tea bags. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, though, like the majority of the people in this club are European folks. I remember we were talking. There was a good group of German people there, like a fat group of German people there, and they got a kick out of us that we were there.
Yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, you guys are in the minority here." I'm like, "Yeah, that's great." But no, we ended up having a great time out, and like you said, the liquor was flowing, things were going, and we leave probably about, I don't know, like 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. Like
It was late. Yeah,
it was late.
It was.
And so the 3 of us left. I look up at one point, and Sean's just walking off, and I'm like, Sean, Sean. He just either didn't hear me or couldn't hear me, and then it was just me and Zeph. And Zeph had been feeling himself, and he was, having a good time, and he may have said he was yelling a few things he probably shouldn't have, and we're just trying to navigate down the streets of Trinidad. I don't know, and I'll be honest with you, I had just memorized the name of the main street that the hotel was on. I found that street and like had memorized the number the place we were staying, and I was lucky. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of my only travel stories that I was lucky I made it home that night.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
By my own, I mean, like, it took me an hour, and it didn't even take that long to walk up there.
Yeah, at some point you guys went right, and I stayed left.
Yeah,
and I was all turned around that night. But yeah,
and we weren't staying in the same place either, which made it even more difficult.
Yeah, and it was like a grid pattern city, but it wasn't. Like the grid doesn't line up. If you look at it on a map, it's kind of
like you'd go down a street expecting to go all the way down, and it just dead ends.
Yeah, then you got to loop around. It's very dense.
Like all the buildings look the same. Like, I'm not just saying that, but they all were either like a pastel color with little
most
balconies.
Most of them were 2 to 3 floors.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I got close. I'll give myself that. I ended up paying some guy like $20 to just a local to essentially give me directions. I think he walked with me back to where I could get to the street I was on. I was close.
Just out having a cigarette, like, and then here's these big redheaded dude walking down the street, like, oh, hey.
That was where I was lucky to have a little bit of Spanish in my pocket, as I could talk to these guys and be like, hey, where is this?
Because that's the one thing, like, usually when you travel most places, you find a guy who speaks pretty good English. In Cuba, though, once you get out of Havana, you might be fucked.
There was, I mean, the bartender spoke English. I mean,
but
there were a few, but yeah.
But on the streets, though, the common.
Why would they?
Why
would they learn English? If they learn a second language, it's probably Russian, you would think,
or something,
French.
Right? No, and that's very true, buddy. But I mean, that wrapped up the trip. I remember us sleeping a bunch on the bus back to Havana, and
we stopped at the farm where you got your profile picture for the show on the way back, right?
That's true. We did do that. That was the one thing that is very true. So that picture of me that you guys see on the cover of the podcast episodes when you go to click on things, just basically was taken there. Actually, I think you or Aiden might have even taken the picture, to be honest with me.
Yeah, probably.
Because I mean that's who was there on the group, on the trip, and it's just me looking out over these sugar fields. But they built these towers basically, and I talked about this I think on like the first episode of the podcast. To watch the field workers and to make sure the slaves didn't escape. So I mean, I guess that has some mixed history. It made a good view for me, but I guess the view of somebody standing there a few years prior might have been a little different. Puts things in perspective for you.
Yeah, got to appreciate where you're at.
But that I actually quite enjoyed that part of the trip, though. I mean, because you got to see like the beauty of the Cuban countryside.
Beautiful country, beautiful between the oceans, and I don't know they had mountains.
Mountains. I mean, the whole middle of the country is pretty mountainous.
But yeah, no, very. The natural beauty down there is incredible.
And great people. The locals were super nice.
Yeah, I should have made that point when I said how so many people were talking about how they love Americans. It's it goes both ways. They were all, for the most part, very friendly. Some guy helped me get home when I was lost.
No, exactly.
Like people were but yeah, it's just which goes to the government doesn't speak for its population almost ever.
Yeah, no, not
in
usually.
a lot of senses like that. Like I haven't been, but I was one place I really want to go to is Iran.
Yeah, yep.
For some of the history they have there. So I watched some, YouTube people who have been there, and it's almost like word for word the same thing. It's the locals walking up to this guy and are like, "Are you American? Like, go back to America and say that Iranians aren't like we love America. We're not bad people. It's just our governments don't get along. It's not us."
Yeah, yep.
And that's the case with so many places. It's like
I think you're right there. I mean, like, with the exception of maybe like
North
Nor
Korea
I was gonna say
is
North Korea and Russia. I mean, like those, like, I mean,
yeah.
they just. I'm not even talking about like like Brittany Griner or anything like that, but like that guy who was the reporter for like the Wall Street Journal or something like that, Gershkovitz. He actually went to like college in Bowdoin in
Oh,
Maine,
really?
and he's just like being held there. Probably gonna end up in Siberia, like you know what I mean. And like he's just like he's just trying to do his job as a journalist. You know what I mean? Like I doubt he's actually spying. I mean, the guy went to fucking Bowdoin College for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, well, you never know.
I know. I mean, but
You got to tiptoe so carefully. I mean,
that's I guess what I'm getting at is that you have very few countries where you actually have to like tiptoe like
yeah.
that.
Well, even to say that, like, I don't think the average Russian citizen on the street is like, "We hate America." We want to go to war with America. I think it starts with the government.
Yeah, no, that's
and
true. That's true.
Maybe I could be wrong. I don't. But
I do think there's a lot more brainwashing that goes on in Russia though than in comparison for a country so big.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that there's a lot more of. You'd be surprised. Like there are a lot of people that disagree with Putin, but there are a lot of people that also agree with him too. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I think most people just know which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, no, that's true too. I mean,
You know-
opportunity. Yeah, opportunity be knocking.
Yeah, let a motherfucker in.
Yep. Oh, that's another thing that we also bonded over is our mutual love of Action Bronson. Quick sidebar there. I mean,
Mr. Baklava.
the Mr. Baklava. Have you gotten to see him live? Just
No, I was supposed to at the Paradise, and then
That's right.
it got canceled because of COVID. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, it did. You had messaged me about going to that too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had tickets and I got a refund because
Yeah.
canceled because of COVID.
There was a lot of things we were gonna do and got ruined because of COVID. We were gonna go to like a Nate Diaz fight in New York.
Yes, it
Or
was.
something like
No,
that.
it was Khabib.
Or it was Khabib. No,
Khabib
yeah,
and
that's right. It
Tony
was
Ferguson,
Khabib. Yeah, no, you're right. It was Khabib. It's also 4 years ago now. But yeah, no, we were supposed to do that, and then we weren't going to be able to go to the Dana White Fight Island because we're just
Yeah.
not there yet.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, though, our friendship started because of a mutual class and trips, and we still find a lot of joy in traveling, which is kind of fun keeping up on your adventures, buddy. Because
Huh.
like, I mean, like, I wish I was in a point like sometimes where I was able to just like drop what I was doing at the time and go like do that road trip or do that. You know what I mean? Like just me
Yeah, me
personally.
too.
You know
It's
what I
like,
mean? Like
the little disclaimer I will say is
Yeah.
I run into people all the time and they're like, "Man, you're always at a festival or you're always on vacation. You're doing this," and it's a little bit of like there's a name for it with regards to like Instagram. It's the Instagram effect or something, but it's
Yeah.
people post what they want to post and what they
yeah,
want you
no,
to.
and that's true to a point.
90% of the time, and lately I've been a little busier, but 90% of the time it's like I do nothing.
Right.
And then, but I luckily I have been lucky enough and whatnot to do a good bit of traveling. Especially again lately, it's been a little bit of a increase.
Yeah. No, and I mean just like but like just being able to like, pick up and like go to like a festival or go down to Texas for this or do that. Like I admire that. And I mean
Yeah.
maybe I'm weird.
Huh.
Very big possibility there too. But like I don't know. And I get what you're saying though, and that is a huge problem, like the social media effect or whatever, the
Yeah.
Instagram effect or the Facebook effect, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, no, that's very
Well,
fair too.
the
Sean.
flip side to it is that's what allows me to do something like that. Like there have been like the road trip I just did to Oregon, which we can talk about a little bit,
Mhm.
was relatively spontaneous, but most of these have a little bit more planning than it looks.
Yeah.
It's in the works for so long, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna text you or call you or post on anywhere like getting ready to go to
Yeah.
Texas.
yeah, yeah.
Like
no, yeah, I
I'll
get you.
send the thing when I'm in Texas.
Right. Yep. No, that's fair.
So
that's very fair.
but like again, most times I don't go out to the bar on Fridays and Saturdays for the most part. I go to here and there. I go to a concert. I go to some stuff. But
Yeah.
the money I save doing that, opens up when it's time to go somewhere much more of a
Right.
ability to do that. Like I've invited people to stuff and they're like, "Oh man, like I don't know how you spend, hundreds of dollars on these weekends, and you go down, like, it's so much money, it's this, that, the third, and then, they're on Snapchat stories or whatever every Friday and Saturday.
Dropping $100 at the bar every night.
At the bar in the club where you're spending $70 on drinks.
Yeah.
Like, how much money on an Uber? How much money on this? On eating out.
All that shit adds up too. Yeah.
It's like skip a couple weekends, and then you funded a trip to, somewhere.
Yeah. No, most definitely. Yeah, that's a very fair point too. And I mean, like,
not that I'm saying you do that, but
right,
I've
had
that interaction with people in the past.
I'm just broke because of college. That's, I mean, going back to electrical school, that's my problem. But
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, and it's just, but that and having the PT,
gonna pay off
the PTO.
Yeah.
But I'll be able. It's just gonna take me a little bit longer to. But like, I haven't traveled nearly as much in the United States as I've wanted to, and I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, because like, I'd love on my list, and it's very high up there, is to do a cross country road trip.
Highly recommended. Just don't take a Dodge.
That's I remember that, dude.
Never
you were
doing
like,
a road trip
you
in a
guys
Dodge
broke
again.
down hard too, didn't you?
Oh my god!
Didn't you end up in the back of a U-Haul, or did you guys?
Not the back of a
Oh,
U-Haul.
okay,
We were in the front, but that we. So the town we broke down in, we actually didn't break down in town. The town we broke down closest to was Rock Springs, Wyoming. And we limped the truck back to there, and unfortunately, like, I had to get back to work. Like, I had that was Wednesday or something, Tuesday or Wednesday. I had work the next Monday. It was my friend's family's truck and camper we were using, and I was like, listen, I can't wait for the mechanic to fix this. Like, I got to go home.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get a rental car. There was 2 rental car places in town. They had no inventory. The nearest airport was 2 hours away, and it was like a small airport,
like a little municipal airport.
Yeah.
Like, guys are flying like crop dusters out of and shit like that. And, like,
the nearest major airport was Denver, which was 4 hours away.
Another state
or
away.
more probably.
Yeah.
So to get back, the only vehicle that was available for rent was a U-Haul. Yeah, it wasn't great. So also they lied to me at the U-Haul place, because there were 3 of us, and I said, the U-Haul has a bench seat for 3 people, right? They go, yes, definitely. They pull it up. I said, this has 2 seats. They were like, yeah, we know, we were wrong.
We lied.
Yeah, we thought we had a 3-seater. We don't. So initially, I didn't have to deal with this, which was good, but it was the 2 seats, and then just a cooler in the middle for one of my friends to sit on, and then eventually we pulled out like a folding camp chair, like a Coleman chair, and there was enough room in between the 2 seats to sit there. So if we got pulled over, it would have been probably pretty.
It would have
bad.
been all over. Yeah,
They would not have taken too kindly to that, I don't think. But that was the only vehicle available. 'Cause I think the kid whose family's truck it was, his dad ended up going to get it like months later. So
that's wild.
Yeah,
that's absolutely wild. I just like remember looking on Snapchat and like seeing just like where you were that day. It's just like, I mean, like, once you get to the middle of the country, there's a lot of corn. I understand that. You know what I mean? Like, it gets pretty flat, but just like to see the difference in biomes, or if that's what you want to call it, or the different,
biomes is probably good, no?
the good, the difference between like all these different like environmental areas. I mean, I'm very much used to my main woods, lakes, rivers, streams, like the abundance of, greenery and, I mean, yes, the winter too, but like when I went out to Arizona, man, I tell you what, that was like stepping onto Mars.
It's so different.
It was like being on a different fucking planet.
It's so
which
different.
is cool. I like that though.
This is a fucking beautiful country.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we are so. I guess what I was getting at is like we're so lucky to live here. I mean, like we won the draw, buddy. Like, in terms of happening to be born in this country, dude. Like, it's just not even just like the freedoms and shit. But
I think it was one of the Kaisers in Germany said, God has a special place in his heart for drunkards, fools in the United States of America.
It's true. I mean, we just won, like, and so I guess like how many, if you can, off the top of your head, buddy, like just like the different trips you've done, how many different like road trips and shit have you done?
Major road trips, probably 4 to 5.
Yep.
Give or take. At least 4 that I can think of.
Right.
And maybe a handful of smaller ones that whether you want to count them as a road trip or like going to Pennsylvania count as a road trip. Not really.
Right. I mean, you could justify like you could drive from like my camp to Massachusetts and justify that as a road trip.
Yeah.
Or the family camp. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
'Cause that's like 8 hours of driving. You know
Yeah,
what I
but
mean?
to me, I wouldn't consider it like a road trip.
Right.
So at least 4, and then depending, if you wanted to get in the weeds with how you rank them, maybe a handful more.
Yeah. Yep.
But did one to Colorado. I've done Florida. This most recent one was Oregon, North Carolina, and a handful more.
Other than don't take a Dodge, what recommendations do you have for folks that are getting ready to road trip?
Have confidence in your group of people that you're with.
Yeah.
Bring people that it's trying to be in a car with anybody for 40 hours plus in a week. And you're going to run into stuff. So
Right.
like
right.
yeah. Well, the only reason we even made it as far as we did to Wyoming was, one of the guys who came with us is trained as a mechanic.
Oh,
And
sweet.
could patch up some of the smaller issues we had, and then eventually they just
Got out of control,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So have some bring people you can get along with, and if they have some
skills.
If they have some skills,
yeah, that's
is a huge plus.
Yep.
And everybody's different. So the level of planning, you have to know yourself and your friends. And like for me, my style of planning is like, we'll go to this place and then just like hang out. Or I'll pick like when I'll use Colorado as an example.
Yeah.
We were there for 7, but the trip itself was, I believe, 8 days. We were in Colorado for 5.5 of those, essentially. We planned out, we're going to go to a concert on this day. We're going to go to a baseball game on this day. We're going to go to a national park on this day. And that was about it. The rest was pretty. So I like a lot of flexibility and openness.
You're a lot like I am when I travel then, because actually it was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Like when you plan an area, do you go because there's a festival there? Do you do
sometimes?
But the flexibility though, that's cool too. Like similar thing. Like my mom was like, "Do you want to go to Cleveland to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?" I talked about that a little bit on the last episode. If you haven't had a chance to go to Cleveland, Cleveland's a cool city.
I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, perfect. So you know then.
I was this close. I was this close to going to college in Cleveland. Actually.
Oh no shit. But so you get what I'm talking about though. Like with a place like that, there's a lot going on. In an area like that. Like I mean, like you look at like you got like between all the sports teams, you got 3 different sports teams there. I mean, minor league baseball, major league baseball, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Christmas Story House.
Yeah, some of the some of the lakeshore area that's not in the city but nearby is very nice.
They have their own little Italy in Cleveland or just outside Ohio City.
So does Montreal.
Yeah, I mean but that's kind of what I'm getting at is that like so many of these places have like cool little things. Or cool big things too.
Yeah, so it's some people, and if this is you, then do that. Then plan everything meticulously and plan out all the steps. If that's the way you like to do things. But again, my preference generally is to plan a handful of things, and that's kind of the framework and the foundation. Because that half the time you get there and you're like, oh, I want to see this museum or this or that thing, and then you'll walk by like a flyer at a bar or something, and it's like live band playing at this venue at this time, and you're like, shit, I can't go. Like I have tickets to this museum, so.
I get what you're saying there. Yep.
Yeah, so I, fill a little bit of your time, in my opinion, with scheduled events, a baseball game, a concert, a tour of a museum, a beach day, whatever, and then leave open, especially on a road trip.
Yeah.
Especially on a road trip, because you're going to drive by stuff.
If you see something, say something. That's what I always say to people.
I finally hit it on the way back from Oregon with my girlfriend, Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Every time I've driven it, which now I'm thinking of a few other things, Chicago trips that count as road trips, realistically.
Oh, yeah.
So I've driven I-90 way out to Ohio or farther probably 5 times. And every time, because you're on I-90, you go through the Buffalo area, and you see the signs for Niagara Falls, and the Niagara Falls is like 45 minutes off the highway. It's not.
Oh, no shit,
yeah. But every time, it's not on the schedule, and we're like, should we go to Niagara Falls? And the first several times, we talked ourselves out of it.
Yeah.
This time we essentially talked ourselves into it, and it was great. So that's one example.
Well, because I remember I messaged you when you were there, and I'm like, "Is it actually like all it's
Oh my
chalked up
god,
to
it's
be?"
awe-inspiring.
And you're like, "No, like if you haven't been, you definitely need to
It's
go."
awe-inspiring. It's
Yeah,
it's what so many things, especially something like that. You're ready, or maybe I'm cynical, but I'm ready for it to be overhyped,
yeah,
and
no,
I'm,
me too.
you
At
know,
this point, I mean, but that's like I guess that's part of the Instagram effect too.
yeah,
Like these places, they put a filter on them and they make them look like they're like angelic or like
yeah. If
like you
you're a
got
skilled enough photographer, you can make some
you can make
relatively, uh, relatively mediocre scenery look amazing if you get the right angle and the sun's hitting at the right time. And I guess the flip side of that is, learn to enjoy the beauty and uh, what might not be a Niagara Falls or a natural wonder.
yeah, yep,
Um,
no, yeah.
but with Niagara Falls, I was so ready to be like, oh, this is it. Like this is what. But it was awe inspiring. It's so like you can feel the power of it. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. No, I mean it's an impressive place.
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't, like I said, I haven't gotten to go myself, but definitely on the list of places to go to.
worth it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like like I've never heard the one thing I've never heard anyone say the Grand Canyon has just disappointed them. Everybody.
No, like
That's another one that takes everybody's
that
breath away. I haven't been there yet. It's high
that
on the list.
exceeds expectation. That's one thing I actually have done.
There you go.
And like
Yeah,
I've posted
I
pictures and
flew
video
over
of
it and it looked pretty amazing from the
Yeah.
plane.
I've posted pictures of it and stuff, but it doesn't do it any justice.
Oh, it's
Like,
incredible how you're looking at something out in the world. You're like, this is like taking my breath away, and then you pull out your phone, and take a picture. It looks like shit.
so funny enough, my high school English teacher, who I've had on the podcast, Mr. Wells, Tom Wells, he used to guide rafting trips through the Colorado, through the Grand Canyon,
That's awesome.
and has done it numerous times. With one of my social studies teachers, and was one of my throwing coaches in high school. It was just like crazy, like that folks from here are just going out there and doing stuff like that. The world's a big place, but it's actually quite small.
Yeah,
With whether it be driving the U.S. highway system or just hopping on a plane.
yeah. It's smaller than it's ever been,
Yeah,
for sure.
and it's small. I mean, like once we have supersonic travel, or once like the next level of
Yeah,
flight
if Elon
or shit.
figures out this tunnel that he's been working
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Where's my tunnel, Elon?
Yeah.
Like, but in all seriousness, though, too, you've gone to quite a few festivals and different, um,
Decent amount.
uh, you know, festivities like that. Festivals and festivities. But I feel like that type of stuff is very important to like the American cultural experience. Not trying to be like too philosophical about something like Burning Man or something like that. But I feel like that shit very much has a place in like the American tapestry. Things like that. Whether it be Bonnaroo or
Yeah,
any
well,
type of
Woodstock
festival,
is is a uniquely American piece from history, and
Yeah.
that's
I mean, like in England, like they had like the Glasgow festival.
Glastonbury.
Yeah, Glastonbury. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Glastonbury festival, and they have different, similar but not quite to the extent of like the American festival scene.
Oh,
In
their
my
festival
opinion.
scene now I know is
It's stepped
very
up,
nice.
but
But yeah, that's again, Woodstock was kind of the blueprint if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what everybody's chasing and trying to recreate.
I think you're right. I mean, I even like myself. I've had myself like being a Grateful Dead. Being a Deadhead. Like you're always trying to like have that like as authentic. I guess call it an authentic experience as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
A Dead show.
like
I haven't been to a Dead show personally. I've been to a few jam band type
But
settings.
you get what I'm saying. You're trying to like, and especially for like, I don't know, for maybe the Grateful Dead people's like, well, it'd be like as close to being like to a show if Jerry were still alive, or like whatever that is for that group or
Yeah.
scene or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's instances of that everywhere.
Yeah, everybody's trying to chase something from some point in the past, and
Or your fear, like your Hunter S. Thompson, like the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, like trying to find what is the American experience? Like what is not the
Yeah.
American dream, but the American
well,
experience?
a festival, like a road trip, is I don't want to say uniquely American, but
I think it is.
kind of uniquely American. Like they don't in Europe. If you want to travel from Portugal to Poland, you take a train.
Yeah.
More likely than not. Here you get in the car and ride on the highway and drive yourself. Yeah, I mean Canada probably is pretty similar. But yeah, that's a unique kind of a uniquely American thing, and I appreciate that aspect of it. I love, this, not that it's not without its major flaws, but I love this country,
Yeah.
So
Oh, I mean, like, yeah. At the end of the day, like I say, United States bullshit, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're still world's better than the next, than the next, like, and I do, like I said, whether it be the environmental beauty and stuff, I do really appreciate what we have.
yeah.
Are there a lot I'd like to change? Well, yeah, fuck yeah, of course, there's always going to be like stuff
Yeah,
that you
and
wanna
our,
change, but
as much as, without getting too soapboxy, as much
yeah,
as they tend to erode like the Bill of Rights and the freedoms that we have here are basically unmatched, at present.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, like people say, well, actually, and like they have the higher education rate in Sweden or something, but like you also have to wait 2 years to be allowed to buy a car. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
the cops can come to your house for Facebook posts.
yeah,
and-
like
I mean, that can happen here under the right, but like
but under
for
due process-
relatively minor, like stuff that here would be
like we're not
nothing
perfect.
burgers.
I'm not claiming the United States is perfect by any means. Like we have flaws, but in terms of personal freedom, like you're doing a lot better here than really anywhere else.
Yeah, the only place that's like the people will go like set up shops in like failed states,
Yeah,
and then you have like almost total freedom because there's no
because there's
no
anarchy.
functioning
Yeah.
government, and you've just built your own
You're in a failed state.
built
Like,
your own town. Like,
Yeah.
that's the one place you can get more freedom than here. But
And what type of freedom is that though? Like that's freedom with a cost. Like
yeah,
in
well,
Yep.
some places there's some places like again, not that I have the real depth of knowledge, but there have been some relative success stories of people relocating to Honduras has a few
yeah,
where kind of people have essentially bought massive plots of land and kind of built their own towns or cities on it with varying degrees of success. But if you get people who are intelligent enough and have enough resources,
the resource.
the
thing's
resource that's
the
huge
big
is
thing,
having
yeah.
somebody to pay for it.
Pockets. Yeah,
But,
deep pockets.
The Honduras government is not going to come after them for
Right.
like most, they got other shit going on.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, they do. The migrant crisis, poverty, and a few other things. But yeah, no, that's very true, buddy. And I mean, like,
Compared to other countries, yes,
Right.
America, like again, you can't badmouth the government in many places. Like,
not to the extent that we can.
yeah, obviously, you think of the extreme end as North Korea or Russia, and you badmouth the government, and
Right
black
the jail.
bag
Right
comes
the
over your
jail.
head
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
no,
gone.
Yeah.
But even places like the UK, like you probably won't get disappeared, but
You'll get talked to
Yeah.
sternly. Yeah, no,
Get
that's
fined.
Fair. Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. Like I said, that's what the uniquely American thing, and like I said, that's similar to like the Woodstock or some of these festival type things, or just instances of people getting together. Like similar to like the event that you're just telling me about. You're at and funny enough, me not realizing it's the same event I'd actually been to at one point
Yeah.
or another, but Porch Fest over in New Hampshire.
Pork
man.
Fest.
Pork Fest. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
Porch Fest is in Somerville.
Pork Fest. I'm sorry. No, this is what happens when I try to do things off minimal amounts of sleep. But no, Pork Fest, which is gets back to the old, it's a libertarian gathering, or is that fair to say?
Essentially, yeah. It's people ask me to describe it, and it's kind of a hard thing to describe. Like it's not a music festival. You hear the name Pork Fest. It's an abbreviation for porcupine.
Yeah.
Which is the Republicans are the
Elephant.
the Democrats are the donkey.
donkey,
The
yeah.
libertarians have taken the porcupine because they don't cause any problems, but nobody they are
But
they
nobody
have
can
spikes,
fuck with
nobody
them
can
either.
get them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like I told my girlfriend almost nothing about it.
Yeah.
In the build up, and I was like, "You want to go to Pork Fest?" And she was like, "How many sausages? Like it's a week long. How many fucking sausages are we gonna?" And I was like, "No, different pork with a C."
Different. Yeah, different one. Yeah.
But then people, even people were like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm at Pork Fest." They're like, "What's that?" It's not a music festival. It's not a food festival. It's not like I've been calling it like a cultural / political festival.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and those exist. I
Yeah,
mean, like,
because I think the cultural part, the political part is kind of, political ideology of minarchism in one way or the other is kind of what unites everybody who's there. But
yeah,
it's not a campaign rally. It's not telling you to vote for anybody. It's not telling you.
no, it's folks with shared ideals talking about said shared ideals and how to implement policies based on shared idealism, right? I mean, or ideology.
So there's lectures of various things, and then everybody sets up their own tent, and you can be a vendor or you can host talks at your own tent. And I mean, it's everything from firearm safety to homeopathic medicine to homesteading and off-grid living to crypto to buying and selling precious metals and everything in between.
Which is it's as someone who's also been to the event. Again, I was there when I did campaign work and didn't even when Sean and I got talking before we came down to record. I was like, oh yeah, I went to that when I worked for Governor Weld, and I mean we had an okay reception there, but that was also I forgot to mention this earlier when Vermin Supreme also showed up.
Yeah,
Was
I'm
Vermin
not,
there?
he wasn't here this year,
Wasn't
no,
there this
but
year?
I'm not surprised at all.
But so Vermin showed up and he said, Governor Weld, can I throw he had a pie tin with
Yeah.
whipped cream. He goes, I will if I can throw a pie in your face, I'll donate either to your campaign or
To a charity or something.
a charity of choosing. And Governor Weld wasn't going to let that happen. Case in point, he goes, with all due respect, Vermin, he goes, we all get a pie in the face some days, or something. Said something. The man was very good at his quips. I mean, I guess that happens when you practice law for a long time
In Massachusetts.
no less in Massachusetts too. But it was funny to I've been at this event. You have anything from talking about internet related stuff like the Silk Road and things, cybersecurity, and to maintaining your AK-47 and how to cook gilly weeds to make tea.
It runs the gamut of so many. There's something there for everybody.
Even if you don't think there's going to be something there for you, there probably there will be.
Yeah, it's a real, and everybody's so, everybody's a free thinker, so to speak. I almost don't like using that label because it sounds so high and mighty. We're a bunch of free thinkers.
It's become a cliche.
Yeah, we're a bunch of free thinkers, and everybody else is that's not what I mean.
Everybody else is a sheep.
Yeah. But it's it's a really somebody's I've just met. I've met so many just characters.
That is the right way to describe it.
Yeah.
As I also describe myself that way a lot of the time too. But no, you're right. Is that these people are very distinct. And they've spent a lot of time cultivating their personalities and likes and dislikes.
Yeah, and a lot of entrepreneurs. That's there are talks on entrepreneurship, how to start your own business. That's one I meant to mention with the list of 5 or 6 others I said.
Yes.
And again, one of the things that was nice to me is, excuse me, it was kind of inspiring to see people essentially paving their own way.
Yeah.
And normal people who go out and
left their 9-to-5 bank job.
and
made it work another way. Yeah.
Following, and a lot of them work a 9-to-5 job, corporate job, and then go there. They have their passion projects and they set that up on the side, and sometimes one turns into the other and vice versa. But because sometimes you just feel like you're stuck in the rat race and you're never going to get out of it, and it beats you down. I'm in between jobs right now with the move. I was working in southern Massachusetts. It was too far to commute.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I moved up without having a new job set up yet. I'm in the process of looking for that now. Which goes back to your point about being able to travel. That opened up, avenues to
right, and
to
it
do
does.
some of
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
absolutely. If you're working full time, it's much more difficult. And I'm sure I'm going to get back to it before too long.
Yeah.
But it's just inspiring to see people essentially get out of the rut and establish something that they love to do, and
they're happier for it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you're all, they have much more of a purpose doing something now because it's what they're passionate about.
I mean, that's huge, though. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I changed careers, I didn't think I would be able. When I left the political field, let me put it to you this way, Sean. I didn't think I'd be able to find anything that I'm as passionate about as I was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially when you have this I've talked about, I know we talked about before. I had this plan set in my mind. I was gonna go, and I remember talking to you. I think we were at was it the Erie Pub down in Dorchester?
I believe it was the Hillside Pub.
The Hillside Pub. Okay, but anyway, we were having a beer at one of these, long established, drinking spots. And I was just like I was in the midst of the campaign. I think I was in like November, and we have like 3 months to go, and I'm just like, I thought I'd be in a lot different place than what I was. I
Yeah,
mean, that's anything. But,
life so rarely goes how you expect it. You
Yeah.
got to be able to.
well, that's been the real learning point of the last 4 years. It's post, I'll call it post St. A's
Sure, yeah.
for me. It's like,
Well, post St. A's and then the pandemic totally, escalated things and especially showed how things can change in a flash. Because I remember the first time I heard about COVID, we were in the office and it was a small news article that somebody clicked on while they were checking the news. And it was like, oh, this bunch of people are getting a disease over in China. Like, that sucks.
yeah, it
It
does.
sucks to be them. Like, and then that was late December, 2.5, or maybe 3.5 months later. St. Patrick's Day was canceled. Like,
Yeah,
don't go outside, don't go anywhere. Like, just stay in the house. Like,
that was weird. It was a weird time.
super weird.
You know?
Yeah, so it's it really it does feel like almost a little bit of a different world.
Yeah,
since
no,
that
it definitely
happened.
is. No, we're in a. I agree with you 125% there. The post-COVID world is like, it rocked everybody's socks, regardless of like how you feel about vaccines, regardless of how you feel about masks or any of that shit.
Yeah,
Like,
things are just not the same as they were
no,
5 or 6 years ago
that's
on a
my
societal level.
yeah, and that's my biggest point with everything that's gone on is that like I don't know, maybe it's a fresh bout of lunacy or like the mental health issues come into play after post,
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
But like,
it wreaked havoc on
shit
people.
is just loony.
That's one of the things I say is I've always been relatively introverted, like not a super outgoing. Like I was stuck in the house for 5-6 months. Like things started opening back up. I went out. I was like, I don't remember how to deal with people. Like,
Yeah,
what is?
no, to a certain point, I can relate to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's just like, well, how do I do with like crowds? I remember going to like my first concert after not being around. Like I was down in Mansfield at the Xfinity Center seeing Dead and Company in 21, and I'm like, what the
It's weird.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, or like, when I was working in the school teaching, like, and you couldn't when you picture like you're working in a school, you're gonna get to like walk up and down the rows and like, do
Yeah.
normal shit. But no, you had to stay in like a 4x4 square.
Everybody
and,
has
like,
a glass or clear plastic cube around them.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I don't know. And I'm not even like, again, not even like focusing on like people's thoughts and feelings on vaccines and masks. It's just,
Which now, how many relationships are different because of disagreements over vaccines and masks?
you're still having problems with that. I mean,
Yeah.
like to a point, like in like hospitals and shit, like staffing, and I mean, I don't know. Like I said, like it's just too bad to see like people being just more divided because of it or whatever. Like people being on edge because of it. It's like
Distrustful.
yeah, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's just like people are like, just leave people alone, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like you had people like narking on their neighbor because they like had a gathering at their house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like shit like police state type shit. Like people are just narking on each other, and it's just like leave people the fuck alone.
I know the one positive that I might say I guess there's more than one positive.
Yeah.
One positive thing that hopefully could come out of that is maybe it'll help people kind of segregate.
Self-regulate.
Well, just in the sense
Yeah.
of if you believe that people should not have been able to have gatherings and you want vaccine mandates and you want masks all the time, in such a situation, you move to New Jersey, you move to Florida, or not Florida, move to Florida. No, Florida's my example for the opposite I was working up to.
Yeah, no, I get you.
You move to New Jersey, you move to Massachusetts, California, and you can set up the rules how you want them.
Yeah, no, exactly.
In your thing, and then if you're the opposite and you want no shutdown, no lockdown, etc., you congregate in Florida or New Hampshire or Missouri.
That's true.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I guess that's kind of happened, but at the same time, that's like, I guess just it's very tribal.
Yeah,
You know what I
it
mean?
is.
And, like,
It's
That's dangerous for.
there are other issues that can arise out of that, but
Yeah, but I get what you're saying though.
at least
100%.
that way people can live under a set of rules and guidelines that they want to live on, and it's not.
And that's kind of
It's less
Yeah.
imposed from the top down, and if you want something different, you can move. You can.
yeah.
That was the theme of Pork Fest this year. Was vote with your feet.
Oh yeah, that's a very fair point. Yeah, I can understand that. And I mean, like, certain areas are kind of like that. Like, I mean, like, yeah, if you want certain policies, go live in a certain place, right? I mean, like, that's fair.
Well, that's
Or if you
federal.
want
That's
to,
federalism in a
yeah,
nutshell, isn't it?
if you want a certain way of living, if you don't want to, I mean, right? If you don't want to be near people, you go live in the country. I
Yeah,
mean, at a very basic level, right? Or if you don't
it's
like,
more complicated.
yeah,
Yes.
right. But I get what you're saying, though, buddy. I mean, like, and that's yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, like, I get where you're coming from 125%. Like, if you have a certain feeling towards certain policies, you don't like the way California's going, move to Texas, right? A lot of people did that.
Yeah.
Like anybody from Joe Rogan down to Joe Smith, like that's fine. Um, I don't know. I'm just all about just trying to approach things with a little bit of kindness first. Just, don't just jam it down somebody's throat. Just
Yeah.
like, let's stop and think about this for a minute. Not too long so that we are like dragging our feet, but like let's put a good amount of thought into something and then act upon it. You know what I mean? Hear the opinions and roll with it.
Yeah, so this kind of loops back to an earlier point we were having about being in school during the 2016 election.
Yeah.
I was studying politics at the time, and like I kind of realized. I wish I realized it earlier. I was like, I don't think I want to be involved in this world, like occupationally. Just especially in 2016, how just whacked everybody got, and like,
Yeah.
one side was like Trump was the centerpiece of the split essentially, but
Yeah.
people on the one side were like, this guy is the greatest and he's going to save the country single-handedly, and then the other side was like, this guy is a dictator and he's going to be worse than Joseph Stalin and Hitler put together if he gets in.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you people just relax? Like, it's not, first of all, like, he's the president. We're in the U.S. There's all these checks and balances. And
There should be anyway, right?
he's
Yeah,
not
no.
going to be the emperor. We're not Rome, or he's not the king of England in the Middle Ages. Like, and second of all, like, he's just a like, he's a guy. You know what I mean? Like,
If you treat him as a guy, he's not going to have this like emperor king status.
this
You know
aura
what I mean?
that
Yeah.
like grows around because.
And I think we are weird about that in this country with our politicians. Like we do, like, I mean, sort of treat them like they. I mean, like, not that they're royalty, but I mean, like, they do kind of have a different. There's different rules. You know.
Man,
what I mean?
what I
Like,
didn't like on the road trip was
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore,
Okay.
and because I saw it and it's like, what kind of North Korea shit is this? Like, we carved the president's face into the side of a mountain, like that.
Yeah. No, that was an interesting time in our country's history.
Yeah.
I mean, like in the same breath though, and in the same time period, we also invented like the propaganda the Nazis used in World War II. Like we created it.
There was
They just took it to the next level.
there was a Nazi rally with 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden in the early 30s.
Yeah. Oh, and we used to have KKK parades down the streets of Augusta.
Yeah,
They hated Catholics and they hated French people. Like, no, seriously.
No, I
like,
know. I laugh because it's funny because it's true.
Yeah, no, I mean, like at one point, Maine had the highest KKK membership in the country.
Mm.
Like we were rolling in the hate and the problems. You know what I mean? Like, and now we're like, I'd consider Maine to be a very purple place. I mean, the southern part of the state very blue. South of Augusta, it's becoming bluer and bluer all the time.
Yeah, with all the Massachusetts people who.
Well, not even just. I mean, that's part of it,
yeah.
but like just.
I joke a little bit.
No, you're right. You're not wrong. I mean, like that's part of it. A lot of folks have come up here. Come to find out, they realize, wow, Maine's actually like kind of a nice place to live, and like, oh, you mean like this job I've been working for 30 years down in Massachusetts? On average, I'm making like 20, 30, 40, 50 grand more than the average fuckstick that's working up in Maine. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But meanwhile, you're paying 3 times the cost for
Right.
your rent or your mortgage.
when you're down there. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm saying, but like it is easy for these people to come up. I mean, like I know in the area where like my family's camp is, like we're like the only camp that still has like trees, like and like the
Everything else is clear-cut.
everybody else is like turned it into beaches
Yeah.
because so the big problem in this state, Sean, is like I don't know if it's so much down like down your way, but like people will like they have like these regulations on shore frontage, right? And these people, like, the fine's so low, they'll just, like, pay the fine and just have the work done anyway.
Yeah, a fine. I forget what the hell's the saying, but it's a fine is just like a cost if you're rich enough.
Yeah.
It's another.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah,
It's another expense as part of the project. If
just
you have
put
the
it
money.
in the it's in the budget for the year.
A lot of trucking companies, not that the one I was at just did this, but a lot of places, if you deliver to like Boston, the ticket that you get for double parking is just part of the cost of business.
Yeah, you go into your financial year expecting that you're going to have to pay that.
Yeah,
That's wild.
it's
Yeah. No, I mean that's absolutely
game.
Yeah, no, I mean like, and I guess it's just like kind of the world we're in. I mean, you have to prepare for everything and expect nothing all at the same time.
You got to essentially prepare for the worst and then hope for the best, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, like I don't know. I just don't know where like that leaves us. Not, again, not even speaking just politically, but just like economically and shit. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's a complicated time, and what's going to happen? How's the future going to go? It's going to depend on human action. It's going to depend on
Hard telling,
again,
not knowing.
my kind of idea is that, and I mentioned it a few times now, is like build the network yourself. Get in touch with people locally who they don't have to believe the same thing as you, but they have to kind of
Similar values.
They have to kind of see life in a similar
similar values. Yeah.
Yeah, and then build up your network of where you're going to get supplies, where you can because like nobody's coming to save you. Basically, the government's not coming to save you. Like
The only person that's there to save you is yourself.
your family and
Yeah.
I mean, your family and friends will help you, but at the end of the day, like it has to come from within and be part of a collaborative effort with your neighbors, the people around
or your
you,
team or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Or your friends or what have you too.
Sure, yeah.
And I agree. That's a huge sentiment. And I think that's a great way to round this thing off. Is that at the end of the day, you got yourself and those that you hold dear to yourself, and you just try to build out what you can.
Yeah, again, nobody's coming to save you. Sounds so doom and gloom. And
But it's true at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like,
don't look at it as doom and gloom. Look at it as an opportunity to take control of your own
or overcome hardship.
Yeah, take control of your own situation and deal with life has always been a struggle. We talk all throughout human history. It's
I mean, like we said at the beginning of the episode,
it's crazy time. It is one of the best times. It's the best time to be alive in history. Really, as far
you're at
as
the pinnacle of technology and many
medicine.
other things, and people. Yeah, I mean, people are living longer than they ever had, and we're able to go places in shorter times than we ever have been able to.
Yeah,
it's a wild time to be alive in a good way, and like.
Yeah.
In the mysticism and everything else that comes with it and the problems. Like I said, there's always going to be problems,
Always going to be problems, but there's so much opportunity.
Exactly. And I think that's a great way to kind of cap this thing off, Sean. And I mean, like, that's kind of what what PorkFest kind of is like, yeah, we have these issues in society, but aside from those, like, there are all these other things.
Let's come together and do something about it.
That make life worth living.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great way to look at things, to be honest with you, buddy. But, yeah, no, thank you, Sean, for coming up. And
of course, man. Thanks for having me. Sorry it took so long.
No, it's okay. You know what? It happened, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. Like I said, I've been planning for you to come up for a while, and I mean, you've been up. I mean, like we had Dew Stock, you were there when I cut my finger open and everything like that. We pretty much like left you, Chap, and Luke the house, and we're like, we'll be back.
Lock up when you leave.
Yeah, lock up when you leave, please. No, I mean, like, it's been a great experience, buddy. And
it's great to see you.
Thank you so much
for
coming
do it again.
up. Oh, definitely we will. And thank you for all of you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate all of you guys. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. Like I said, you can find us on YouTube, the DuView podcast, to physically watch the episodes and listen at the same time, or DuView 207 on Instagram. And we're out there, the DuView podcast. Give us a like.
Listen wherever podcasts are sold.
Exactly. Or wherever you sell your soul. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, guys, we'll be back here in August with another episode. Hope everybody's summer is going pretty well so far. And like I said, the weather's been great, and can't really complain here, guys. So we'll see you back here in another month. Again, thank you one more time to Sean for coming on, and we'll see you guys back here in another month.
Much love, everybody. Keep fighting the good fight out there.
Woo!